leads me into the reverse dieting. So a lot of people, for whatever reason, talk so much shit about reverse dieting because there's a few things. So the idea of go back to maintenance calories as soon as you're done competing, and I have a giant problem with that. First of all, I don't know what maintenance calories are to people. I don't know if there's like some calculator online. Not really sure what's going on with the whole maintenance idea, but usually towards the end of a prep, I'm not losing a lot of body fat or weight at that point, right? So let's take, for example, a few days out from nationals, I'm about 1,200 calories or so on my low days. Is that my maintenance now? So I should go back to that, right? Because at that point, I wasn't losing any more weight. So I don't get the maintenance argument, because if something was your maintenance, then you'd be losing weight on that, or you'd be maintaining. But if I go back to that, typically I'm not going to be maintaining my weight. So I think maybe that's a little bit more applicable for people who aren't dieting as harshly for a physique competition. But when I'm down to 10% and 125, which is a weight that my body does not like to be at, that's just a little bit different, I think. So the first 4 to 6 weeks of a reverse diet are very, very difficult, and there's a reason for that. I study a lot of weight regain physiology, and I mean the mechanisms behind it are very, very clear. Your body wants to add as much body fat as possible in the shortest amount of time. It does not want to add back any fat-free mass. It does not care that you're eating triple what you were before. The hunger signals are all screwed up between your brain and your gut, and I mean everything literally is so. I'll put the link to the abstract in the article, in the description, but my favorite article of all time that I've read probably too many times to count is the McLean review, The Biology of Weight Regain. And I mean, biology's response to dieting, the impetus for weight regain, that's what it's called. It is just amazing if you have time to read it or you want to read it, but you will learn so much in there. And yes, that is mostly animal models, but the research they can do on animals that we can't do in humans. You can't control things that way. You can't take the fat pad out of a person and count how many adipocytes they have now. You just can't do this kind of stuff with people. So animal research for mechanistic reasons is extremely important. So just keep that in mind when you're reading it and don't discount it right away. But so I understand from what I've heard, the controversy is you should go back to maintenance, but also people don't like the idea that you're in this really strict calorie deficit for longer than you should be, and that is potentially keeping your hormones suppressed, keeping your RMR suppressed, etc. So again, what we know is that when you do diet severely, nothing comes back. Boom. Oh, the diet's over, go back to maintenance. Your RMR just flew back up. Your hormones are all stabilized. I do think that drawing it out very, very, very slowly is slightly unnecessary, but it all depends on the person. So if you have an event coming up, or you have something else where you need to diet again, or some clients really, really want to stay as lean as possible, and that's just kind of how they want to live. So for those people, what are you going to say? Oh no, I want you to get fatter faster. No, you don't do that. Or if somebody has to make weight again for a competition, my client Lizette, we dieted her for the meet that we both did, and then she qualified for nationals. So now we slowly reversed her so that I would kind of be able to push out the reverse so that we didn't really have to diet much for the meet. So everything's really case by case, but I do understand where people are coming from. Oh, you don't need to add, a gram of fat per week. Okay, I kind of get that, because I do understand that is extremely frustrating, but you're going to get the best results the slower you go. It's the same thing as how crash dieting has a lot of negative effects. Adding in a whole bunch of calories is not always the best idea. Now, psychologically, I'll be the first one to say that it is very difficult to stay on your numbers 100% all the time. I'm not a person who likes doing that. I've watched what I've ate my entire life, so at the end of a contest prep, I get very sick and tired of tracking everything perfectly, and I'll be the first one to admit that, and I'll go into that fuck it mode, you know what I mean? I had a few good meals, and then, you know what, let me just eat this, I don't even care anymore. So I need to find some kind of way, you know, with me and Lane working together to properly reverse, but also take that into consideration. So that's what my goal really is for this off season, for this reverse diet, and I'm hoping that with the case study we can document it. And my advisor is like, I don't care what you do. He's like, if you sit around and eat ice cream all day, you just tell me, and then we put that in there. Or if you do it perfectly, you know, there's no perfect one way or the other. We just have to report what we're doing. So that's what I plan on doing. And if we get this published, I mean, that would be cool. If we don't, at least I've really diligently tracked all of this information over, you know, a long period of time. And, you know, so that's I hope that addressed maybe some of the why, like, the reverse dieting controversies. It's not this made up thing. I mean, what really bothers me is the people who are just so hell-bent on finding like 6 peer-reviewed articles on something before they believe it's true. And while that is great, I love science. I'm doing a research project. I'm actually doing 2. I'm in grad school. I'm a giant nerd. But there are some things that just can't be done in the lab. And it takes years for this shit to, like, you know, happen. I mean, I came up with my idea last year. I'll finish testing another year late, you know, a year later, and then I probably won't even get it published for another year. So that's just 3 years right there with one little project. And you know, like I've talked about before, you can't always do everything that you want to in a lab, which is why case studies are great, because, you know, I can control what I'm doing for myself and I know exactly what I'm doing. Whereas if I have a study with 30, 40 people, it's a little bit harder, you know what I mean? So that's why animal research is so great, because you tell the rats what to do and they kind of do it. They always show up too. So, you know, I just, you know, I'm so frustrated with sometimes with people that are, like, this idea is still new, obviously, the whole idea of metabolic adaptation and the reverse dieting, and that's why we don't have this plethora of literature on it yet, because that shit takes time. But all good research comes out of ideas and things that you observe over and over and over again. And I mean, it is very clear that if you overeat and you have rapid regain, there are serious consequences. And that's just kind of, you know, where things come from. I'm not saying that you have to add in super, super slowly. You can be a little bit more what we would call aggressive with the reverse. And that's usually what we do and what I tell Lane I want to do, because I can't, you know, I don't like to be in that ridiculous deficit. But I know that accompanies more body fat. But you have to know that going into it. You can't say, I want to add all this food back in, but I want to stay stage lean. You know, you can't do both. So there has to be some kind of in between. So I do understand where some people get a little bit don't understand the reverse dieting, or they don't agree with it, you know, super strict post contest. But I would just come back and say I don't agree with the counter argument, which is go back to maintenance, because I don't believe that your maintenance is, if you've gotten lean enough and you've dieted for so long, you don't really know what your maintenance is. So that's what I hope this maybe showed people. And, you know, I'm hoping that with my case study, and then also with my research, just kind of going over, seeing how people regain weight after, not even necessarily tracking it, but I just want to see how weight regain is affected after a diet. But, you know, we're hoping to get more research on reverse dieting. We're hoping to get more research on metabolic adaptation, but these things take years. So the best we can do is make formulated opinions and, you know, evidence-based approaches, and not necessarily if you don't have 6 peer-reviewed papers, doesn't mean that it's not real. So hopefully that was a little bit of a ramble. I'm really sorry. And I warned everyone, it's going to be longer. I just had to go over a lot. So I hope that was helpful and exciting. And I'm really excited to share the results with everyone as far as the case study and how progress keeps going. And I'll be sure when we do the 4-week testing that I'll kind of go over it again. I'll go over the 8 weeks out, and then I'll go over the post, like the 4 weeks, and kind of see the differences and explain them to everyone. So I hope everyone has a great weekend and kick some ass. Bye!